Well, today's message is for 10 people. The 10 of you kind of in the middle of the front row here, the youth from our confirmation class. And now the rest of you can listen in. You're welcome. And I believe God will use this in your life as well. But all week as I have been praying and preparing, I've been thinking of these kids. I've been thinking about you and praying for you. When I was your age, up to that point, and especially for those last few years, I hadn't really been doing a lot of thinking about God, except maybe in church. And the only time I probably did much praying was when I was in trouble, or maybe when I had a stomach ache, because I used to get those once in a while back then, and I was never sure whether my prayer helped my stomach or not. Because how do you know? I mean, would you have gotten over it just as easily and just as soon if you hadn't prayed? I mean, how do you know? It's hard to tell. But shortly after I turned 15, suddenly I didn't know if I believed in God. Why should I believe in God? Can't see God. I don't hear God's voice. God doesn't write us messages up in the sky. Well, it would be cool, though, if He did, wouldn't it? God took out his cloud tip pen and wrote us little messages in the sky, like, I love you. Read your Bible. Brush your teeth. Whatever He wanted to tell us. And I believe that if God did that, well, there'd be a lot more believers, wouldn't there? And a lot fewer cavities, probably. I want to bring up something that we usually don't talk about much here at church. And that's that probably all of us have thought a little bit seriously at some point about atheism. At least we've pondered the possibility, what if there is no God? Scary thought, really. And the scariest part for me was thinking that, if there's no God, then when I die, it's all over. End of story. Case closed, lights out, party's over. If there's no God, then when you die, it's like you never were. Personally, I found that terrifying. But I thought, hey, if that's the truth, we better face up to it. I'm not going to believe in God just because I'm afraid not to. That would be stupid. And so that began a search for me to find out if God is real. I wanted hard evidence. I wanted proof. Witnessing a miraculous healing like in the Bible, that would be nice. Walking on the water, that wasn't necessary. But, maybe if I could meet someone who had been blind but could now see, that would do. But I'd never, witnessed anything like that. Never witnessed any really big, bona fide miracle. Sometimes I worried if there is a God and I doubt Him, does that bother God? Do I make God mad by doubting Him? I mean, will God want to send me to hell if I doubt His existence? And then I'd get mad at God and I'd say, well, it's all your fault for not being more obvious. Sometimes I'd hear, somebody share their story, or maybe I'd hear a passionate sermon and it would inspire me to almost believe. And at other times, I just wondered if God was just something that people made up. One day in school, I heard a friend, one of my classmates, make a kind of a snide comment about another classmate who had a headache but said she didn't need any aspirin because she'd prayed about it. I thought, woo, I didn't see that coming. Now, I didn't have anything against aspirin. I still don't have anything against aspirin. But what shocked me was that she took God so seriously. I wondered why she seemed to believe in God so much more than I do. So one of the things I tried to do is start reading the Bible. I'd read the Bible in Sunday school. I'd heard the Bible read in church. But up to that point, I don't think that I had really ever done much of, just picking the Bible up on my own and reading. In my bedroom, I had a little green New Testament about this big. It was King James Version, which I didn't know at the time, which was written with about the same kind of English as Shakespeare, which made it a challenge. And anyway, I decided that I was going to sit up in bed every night and read a chapter, starting in Matthew, before turning out the light. And this went on for about 3 weeks, and I have to say it probably helped me fall asleep better. So that was good. But I didn't understand it very well. And most importantly, though, the biggest factor was that it wasn't really helping me decide if God was real or not. At least at that time. So now I might have given up on Christianity altogether, except for one thing. I couldn't figure out why it had lasted so long. Why was Christianity still around? If all anybody ever had was what I had, it would have died out long ago. It would not have lasted this long. Why did Christians through the centuries, what did it mean to them that they felt so motivated to build great churches and cathedrals? And why did some of them cross oceans on what looked to me like they would have been rickety wooden ships and face terrible storms at sea, all so that they could tell people about Jesus? Why did it mean that much to them? I couldn't figure it out. Why were some of them willing to die for this? What did they know that I don't know? What did they have that I don't have? But this quest to discover if God was real wasn't the only thing going on in my life at the time. There was another layer that I was dealing with. I was a pretty good kid growing up. I had a strong conscience, and our parents didn't let us get by with much, so those two things kind of worked together a lot, I guess. But starting in about 7th grade, like a lot of kids, I just started saying stuff and doing stuff to fit in, and I just started changing. And I'm sure that, my parents could tell that I was becoming a more rude and crude and angry kid. And this just kind of seemed to gradually get worse and continue over those next 2 or 3 years. And so about the time that I started thinking about whether or not God existed, I also decided to reform myself. Okay, I decided I'm going to change myself. Some of you have heard this, so if you have and you feel like this is a good time to kind of catch up on your sleep, you can do that. Be a good time. But anyway, I was in the 9th grade, and I remember going with a friend of mine one day to the bowling alley so that he could borrow some money from his sister, who was a senior in high school. And while she was getting into her purse, she looked over at the guy who was in the bowling lane. I can still picture this. I can just see it from the back, just doing this. But she pointed over to him, and she said, "He's the nicest guy in our class." And I thought, maybe someday someone will say that about me. I knew that I didn't have much athletic ability. I wasn't the smartest kid in my class, or I wasn't the funniest. I didn't have a lot of money. So on the coolness scale, I was way down the list. Okay? But maybe I could be good at this. Maybe if I really try, some girl will think I'm a little bit cool and will maybe say that I'm the nicest guy in our class. So I guess you could say that my project to reform myself was pretty much all sexually motivated. You know how it is.